All righty, it looks like we got everybody filtering in here. I'm excited to do today's webinar on everything you need to know about running Google Local Services ads in 2025 for water damage, mold, fire, all of those sorts of services. So we have a nice little group here joining, and there's some other people filtering in over the next couple minutes here. Before we get started, I would love to get some information from everybody so I understand where everybody's at from your business and where you're at in the country. So if you wouldn't mind, just in the chat there, type the city you're in. I'm in St. Louis. It's a lovely spring day here today in St. Louis. But in the chat there, I'd love it if you could share where you're at in the country. Hopefully it's turning spring. Colorado Springs, nice. Oh, rainy and cold. Nice. Fort Worth, gotcha. Okay, thanks for sharing, everybody. Again, we're going to start here in just a couple minutes. Denver, got a lot of people in Colorado. Great, thanks for sharing. And again, today's webinar is going to be about Google Local Service Ads or Google Guaranteed, whichever one you want to call it. It's the same service. I'm going to give you everything I know about it, everything that our team knows about it, from managing I think we have over 80 profiles now that we manage across all of the clients. And this is going to be information download here for everybody. So give it one more minute here and we're going to kick things off. The final feedback, I'm assuming you're hearing me great. So that way, because you're commenting in the chat there, I would love to know if you are actually running Google Local Services ads now. Put a 1 in the chat if you are running them. If you are not running Google Local Service ads, put a 2 in the chat. Just give an understanding of where everybody's at. Okay, lots of people running them. And I assume you are here to get more out of it. So I will definitely give you everything we know about it. And anybody not running them, put a 2 in the chat there. All right. So in the essence of time, we're going to go ahead and get started. A quick introduction, and then I'm going to share my screen and run through the agenda and all of those things related to this. So I know most of you guys are running Google Local Service ads. So we will talk about the setup and optimization along with signing up with a new profile, but I'm going to also give you some amazing tips that you can look at on your profiles. So, all right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, today's webinar is about everything you need to know for running Google Local Service ads for water damage, for mold, for fire damage in 2025. And we're going to dive in real quick here. If at any point during this webinar you have a question, just put it in the chat there. I'm going to be monitoring that and I will stop and ask your question. If I don't have time to get to your question, I will stay after and answer any questions that you might have. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and get a little bit more feedback on, do you see my screen right now? If you could type in the chat a yes, appreciate that. Awesome, thanks Matt for that feedback. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and dive in here. What we're gonna cover again is a quick introduction, common problems we see. We're going to talk about why Google Local Service matters, verification process, or if you get stuck on that verification process, tips there, profile setup and optimization, how to handle leads and ratings or rankings back on those leads to Google, keys to success, top 5 do's and top 5 don'ts. We have an amazing team. I pulled our team most recently as of today and said, hey, give me everything you know, what we're seeing on all profiles, and I want to make sure we get them the latest and greatest information. Okay, so we're going to have all of that real-time data off of over 70 profiles, 75, 80 profiles that we're managing right now, and then we'll create an action plan. All right, if you could just give me a few minutes of your time here, I promise it's going to be worth it. I don't think it's going to go to 60 minutes, but if it does, because you have some questions, then there will be a recording of this. If you stay to the end, you'll get that copy of the recording as well. So let's go ahead and dive in. I'm going to also give you a copy of our book, our checklists, and all past recording from our training series, webinars as well. Again, this is helpful information that is going to help set you up for success on not only Google Local Service ads, but all things related to visibility, branding, and growing your reputation. So Just a quick introduction of myself. I have a passion for this industry because I've twice been impacted by a fire in my home. My parents, the house got struck by lightning when I was 6 years old, burned to the ground. And as a homeowner, I've had a situation where my house flooded as well. And so that's how I got introduced to the industry. And that's where my passion comes from. We have over 65 active clients right now across the United States that we're working with. And I've wrote a book on our strategies, and we have a podcast and video series and training. So enough about me, but let's dig into this a little bit here. These are some of the clients that we work with on a daily basis. But my true goal here is to help over 100 restoration companies in 2025. So whether you get some information on that, or whether we have a session and I give you some advice, or whether we work together, that's going to help contribute to that goal. Some of the common issues I see within the industry right now, there's obviously tons of competition. Everybody wants the mitigation jobs. Not everybody wants the rebuilds due to complexities there. But at the end of the day, anybody that has a hammer, sometimes it feels like they feel like they want to do the mitigation stuff. So tons of competition. Obviously, the high cost of getting the phone to ring, it's a big problem, and it's only getting more expensive. And so there's lots of ups and downs each month. And really, as a business owner myself, really what you need is to understand what that strategy is and how to get you on a level playing field with the competition in your area. And the real harsh reality in 2025 is that about 10% of the restoration companies are getting around 90% of the jobs, is because they have that strategy. They have the visibility, they have brand strength, and they have a reputation. So when people do go to Google, their company is getting recommended. Okay. And it's at the end of the day, you've got a couple mechanisms you can go off of here. And right, a lot of us rely on referrals, plumbing referrals, or insurance, property managers, all those sorts of things, or you're paying per lead. And ultimately, many of us provide amazing services, but the issue is that a lot of people don't know that you exist. And so we're going to help with one of those aspects, because when somebody has a disaster, ultimately they've got three typical areas they're going to go to. They're going to call a plumber because they can't stop the leak. They're going to call an insurance company because they ultimately, are looking for a recommendation on where to go with it, right? Or they're just going to pick up the phone and do a search. And if your company shows up on top, you're likely to get that phone call. And so one of those top visibility aspects of it is Google Local Service Ads. And there's a lot of terminology floating around out there. Everybody's heard of these AI things, PPC, social media, Google Maps, all of those sorts of things. And we're gonna talk specifically about LSA, or Google Local Service Ads. But ultimately, there's three keys to success in 2025. It's about increasing the visibility so you have a fighting chance, building a strong brand because Google trusts strong local brands, and backing that up with an amazing reputation for your company. And that will get your phone to ring. Okay. So today we're going to focus on the visibility aspect of things, and specifically related to water damage, Google Local Service Ads. This does apply to mold and fire and rebuilds and things like that, but mainly focus on water damage. Okay. So on the visibility aspect of things, you're going to see, this is a typical search. If you search water damage Chicago, you're going to see Google Guaranteed. It's also called Google Local Service Ads right at the top of the page, okay? And then below that, you're going to see pay-per-click ads. Then you're going to see the Google Maps section, and then you're going to see organic. What we find is about 80% of the phone calls come from either Google Guaranteed or Google Maps. Pay-per-click helps you expand that proximity out because ultimately Google is looking to match that local searcher with a local company that can solve the issue, okay? And you'll notice here on this screen, Google Guaranteed at the top, highlighted in green, has your reputation assigned to it. Google Maps, right in the middle of the screen there, has your reputation assigned to it. I call it the Amazon effect. Who here has gone out to Amazon and purchased a product or service off of Amazon, right? You don't buy things that don't have a good reputation. And so reputation is key to making all of this work. We're going to dive specifically into why Google Local Service Ads matter. There's a recent study that said 80% of consumers go to Google to search when they're looking for a home service provider. Now, whether that's an emergency remodeling or whatnot. It's all across the board. But, typically if somebody has an emergency, they're going to pull up their phone most likely. And ultimately, you want to be showing at the top of the screen. And that's where Google Local Services really helps because, again, like I showed you on that screenshot, it is at the very top of the screen on most searches on your phone and on the desktop side of things. It also is important because only local businesses qualify for it. And no lead generation company, 33-mile radius, Inquiry, none of those companies can qualify for Google Local Service ads. So you have a leg up there, right? And it's based on pay per call or message. So you're not paying per click, which typically results in lower cost than Google pay per click. And you'll typically have a higher lead quality because it's actually a phone call happening. Okay. And you do have the ability to modify your budgets and schedules and things like that, similar to other ads platforms, but it's a big advantage of the system. Let's talk about verification. Okay. If anybody in here is not running Google Local Services, and you need to go through the verification process, this is typically what you'll see. And if you've already set up your profile, what you'll notice here, this probably looks something similar to what you've gone through. Some areas do not require you to have an IICRC certification. And that's the last one listed on this screen here. But all areas require at least the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 areas to be completed. Okay, and we're going to dive into each one of those and nuances about them to make sure you have the best success. Okay, your verification, you have to do a background check. I would not recommend doing all of your texts or anything like that. I would just do the owner. You're going to upload your driver's license front and back on that. You're also going to need to provide insurance requirements. So this basically is general liability insurance or certificate of insurance. So it's also called the Accord document that shows your company has $1 million in liability coverage with a valid expiration date. And you'll notice here I said name, address, match to what it says on Google Maps. This is super, super critical. If you've had a profile verified before and then you go to re-upload your insurance and it doesn't pass, make sure your name and address is the same exact name that's on Google Maps. If you have LLC on Google Maps, you have to have that on the certificate of insurance as well. Same with the address, okay? The other thing is license requirements. I talked about that before. There's some states that don't require, like Colorado and Georgia, and there's other ones that don't require. Sometimes they'll require a contractor license. You can get by with that. But typically you're going to need, for most states, what's called an IICRC firm certification, FIRM, and it needs to have your company name on it. So you go to IICRC, you pay an extra fee for that firm certification. Outside, it's not the WRT certification. You need to have the company name on it. And I think it's a few $100 to get that. They'll give you a digital copy of it, and it needs to make sure it has the same exact name, punctuation, everything is what's on Google Maps. And that'll avoid any verification issues. And then finally, you need to have a Google Maps profile that is set up, verified, and has a minimum of 3 reviews on it. This is the main steps you need to take to get verified. Okay. Now, if there's any questions, feel free to add them in the chat. But yes, we will be sharing the recording. Rita, you had a question there. So yeah, we will be sharing the recording at the end. You'll get that. As far as setting up the profile, I've blocked out some areas here just to privacy for our client here, but just a screenshot of what that looks like. Go to your profiles if you have one set up and make sure that the address is correct, that you have a tracking number on there different than your Google Maps or the number that's on your website. And the reason why this is important is because of some steps I'm going to talk to you about handling those leads. You need to know that it's a Google Local Service lead versus a referral or somebody that saw your truck number or just a random person that's calling you from a business card or anything. You need to know that to be able to handle that call the best. And I'm going to give you those tips in just a minute here. But have a tracking number set up on there. Make sure your website's correct. Make sure your bio is fully filled out. There's something like 6 to 8 options that you can check off there. There's things that's not showing on here, that like BBB certification. If you have that, you can upload that certificate or provide that link and you'll get certified for that as well. And then you can modify your ad scheduling here. This is very different than the actual business hours. So the ad scheduling, you can set custom if you don't want 24/7 calls, or if you don't want the ads running at certain times during the day, you can set a custom schedule for those to run, which is, again, different than the actual business hours for your company. And I'll talk about that in just a second. As far as your budget and bidding, some tips here, okay? This is what the screens look like. And if you've set up Google Ads and you've raised your budget to 10,000 like this, and you're like, yeah, I'm not getting the recommendation. It says that I should get 67 leads per week. Who put a one in the chat if you've raised your budget as high as you can and it's telling you some crazy number and it's not giving you those leads. You're not alone. Okay, this is false. The recommendations here on leads per week is completely false. As we know, there's highs and lows in this business as far as when people are searching, when they need your help. There's weather dependent things. It's all over the place. I've never seen a profile get the recommended number. Now, we do have profiles that are getting 60 leads per month with a budget of 10,000 or more, but those profiles are unique, and you have to have a massive amount of reviews to be able to do that. Okay, so don't be discouraged if you set your budget high and you're not getting those numbers. Now, there's some things that you can change on the bidding strategies here. They've been changing this over the last 12 months. And so now you can have automated bidding. You can set a target cost per lead. You can set a manual bidding, right? Typically, what we recommend is what they recommended here, which is automated bidding. And what that will do is get you some impressions, get you some leads coming in. And typically, it's going to start super, super slow. So if you've set up curse words, yeah. if you set up if you've set up a profile and you haven't gotten any visibility, any calls coming under there, start with automated bids, and then you can come in here and set a target cost per lead if after 30 or 60 days you haven't got anything come through there. I'm going to show you that on average those leads are going to fluctuate widely depending on where you are in the country. Okay, we're going to share those stats with you in just a little bit here, but it's important to set the budget and then let it play out for a few weeks. And don't go in here changing things every single day on your budget, okay? Because basically what happens, you have to relearn, Google has to relearn who you are, what you do, and what your budget is and everything like that. So just because you set a $10,000 budget doesn't mean it's going to spend it. I promise you it won't. I can't guarantee you that. But what I will say is that it will typically not come close to it, especially if that profile doesn't have enough review strength. All right, so you can set a custom budget here as well. They do give you some recommendations for this, but you can see here that it fluctuates widely what those budgets are set at. You can do manual bidding as well. It's difficult to do manual bidding, and sometimes when you even do manual bidding and say you want to bid $800 for it, you still don't have any impact. And a lot of that could be your reputation. You don't have enough reviews to compete with who's showing out there right now. Okay. As far as job types, there's one category here that we're going to focus on, which is water damage services, but that covers fire, mold. It covers remodeling, quote unquote, restoration, right? You got sewage, water, roofing, plumbing. All of these are what Google's considering some sort of search related to water damage. And what you'll typically see here is there's more volume on the mold side. And so you'll see in this example, we have mold turned off because this client doesn't specifically want mold calls coming in. Now, when you start your profile, I would recommend turning on mold because you want to have Google understand that you answer the phone, that you can that you can help people that are actually getting recommended on your profile and you're providing feedback back on them. But if you get into it 30 days and you're like, hey, these mold calls are not converting, or you can't convert them, or you don't want mold, you can certainly shut it off. But you've actually gotten some calls coming in through there, and Google can see that you have some interaction, and they can still keep recommending your company. But if you set this up and you turned everything off except water damage and your brand new profile, you're probably not going to get anything. Okay. So the key is to get something coming through, and then you can modify these along the way. And you'll notice here this other category is checked, right? This can be a wide array of things, but we typically always recommend other to be checked off there because you never know what a homeowner is actually searching related to water damage. And we all want the mitigation, we want the flooded basements, the sewage backups, all those sorts of things. But homeowners, they don't know restoration industry. They don't type in restoration company. They type in, I've got a problem with this, that, and the other, right? And so that's where the other category will help you out there. So just one point of reference here on job types is if you also do construction or roofing or plumbing and you set up your profile and you've got multiple categories or multiple industries as they show here, typically what Google will recommend is the industry that has the most volume. So you're going to eat up your budget if you have plumbing, if you have construction or remodeling, as well as water damage, and then you're not going to get much out of the water damage. So just be careful with that. If you have two different profiles set up under there, two different industries, and you've gotten certified for plumbing or construction, and that's all you're not getting anything on the water damage, try to remove one of those categories and remove the other category and see what happens there. Now, if you remove it, obviously you're going to have a drop in lead volume. So you can set up another Google Maps profile and get another certification on that profile for Google Guaranteed. But just a word of caution there, if you have multiple industries selected on there, it will typically default to those other industries because there's more volume and it's going to eat up your budget. Okay. As far as service area, some recommendations here. You can add your county, your city, your neighborhood, your zip codes. You can even block certain areas if you want to in there. And what we typically recommend is start with your immediate area where you're located. I know we got some folks in here from Colorado, so you would start, and let's say you serve from Fort Collins all the way down to Colorado Springs. Do not put all of that territory on Google Local Services. Think about how many restoration companies are from Fort Collins through Colorado Springs, right? Google's not going to give you that territory. You want to serve court on home base first or home court first, right? And then you can try to expand out from there. If you put too wide of a territory, Google's going to say, yep, I know this other company has more reputation and they're more focused in this area, so I'm going to match them with that search term. Okay, so keep that in mind. You can fluctuate with the territory and try to change that around, but don't go changing every single week. Start with your immediate territory in there, and that's the best advice I can give you there. Exclude out zip codes that you don't want as well, and it's a good way to to avoid areas or pockets that you don't want to be included in receiving jobs out of. Okay. As far as the next settings here, photos settings, and then business hours. So I talked about before ad schedule versus business hours. Typically what you want to do on your business hours is make that match what's on your Google Maps profile. And so if you're 24/7 on your Google Maps profile, make sure you're 24/7 on this profile, which again is different than your ad schedule. Your ad schedule dictates how the hours that the ads are actually going to show. So if you don't want 24/7 calls overnight, then don't run the ads overnight. If you have a smaller budget and you're running out of budget through that month, then maybe take off the weekends or reduce those hours down on certain hours so that you show out there when you want to show out there more. Okay. As far as the business settings here, message leads are something that was introduced about a year and a half ago or so, and these are extremely important to make sure you respond to as fast as possible. There used to be a mobile app that you could download on your phone, and unfortunately, they took that away. You don't have a mobile app anymore, so it's all desktop. And so you can actually put a phone number in here that will give you a text message when somebody texts about a message lead. It is so important to respond back to this as quickly as possible. Typically, what we recommend is respond again in the Google Local Service app and say, yes, we can help you with this. What's your phone number so we can call you? A lot of times the message leads don't have a phone number associated with it. And so I typically recommend to ask them for the phone number so you can have a conversation with them. Message leads are typically a lot less expensive than phone calls. And so we definitely recommend having message leads available if your team can actually respond to them quickly. And so when I say quickly, I'm saying within 60 minutes, 30 minutes, because otherwise they're moving on to the next person. We don't see a lot of water damage, but not emergency water damage through message leads, but there is some. Some people just don't like to talk on the phone nowadays. So the other setting in here is direct business search. Basically what that is if somebody searches your business name, it can highlight and show your business name up there. Sometimes what you'll see is there's competitors out there that are running Google pay-per-click ads for your brand. and they're overshadowing you on that listing. So you can use your brand name there. Those calls are typically less expensive as well. So, and then finally on the photos, add regular photos to your profile. Photos are should be around the work that you've completed, your team, those sorts of things. I've got some more tips that my team helped me put together here on the do's and don'ts that I'm going to share with you in just a little bit about those photos. But photos are critically important. If you haven't added photos to your profile recently, make sure you're doing that on a weekly basis. These photos do not connect to Google Maps profile photos. These are totally different, and you typically do not see these photos on when you're searching for a company on Google Local Services. But Google wants to see that interactivity on the profiles, and so they're putting it there for a reason. Now, let's talk about handling leads. So handling leads can get a little frustrating. You can pull your hair out, and as Matt, curse words as well in the chat here, Matt said that, and it can be frustrating. As you can see here, this is an active search. Just want to make sure everybody still hears me. Go ahead and put a 1 in the chat there if you can hear me still, and this is making sense and you're getting some value out of this. Thanks, Nicole. Appreciate it. So what you see here is the lead screen that shows you credits charged, in review, the dates, and all of those sorts of things. The type, you'll see the customer name and number, and then the location, okay? And so when you click into this profile here, it'll look something like this. And again, I blocked out some of these areas here just out of respect for our clients. What you'll see here on this profile is that this is a lead that has been charged based on Google AI. They listen to the lead, and they've charged this lead because if you look down on the bottom there, the recording of 14 minutes, there was an active conversation going on here, right? And so Google's AI has determined that this is a qualified lead. You'll notice here, though, that this hasn't been rated. On the right-hand side there, it says rate this lead. And when you click that, you can rate this lead as very satisfied, somewhat satisfied, so on and so forth, or very dissatisfied, and then put a message in there, okay? So if this was a legit lead coming in there, put it as such. Don't try to game the system and saying that this wasn't a good lead, even though it was. If it was, go ahead and give them the feedback back about it and be okay with that charge, right? You're not going to win all of these, though. And that's the frustrating part about this, is that some of these leads are going to come in and Google's going to charge for it because that conversation was longer than 60 seconds. There was information exchanged. Even though that didn't convert to a job, sometimes you're going to get charged for it. And so there's going to be wins and losses in this. But overall, you're going to benefit by providing the quality of the lead and then putting information in here. What's the customer name, the customer email if you had it, any notes. And then at the top, you'll see there was the appointment booked. Okay, providing that all of this information along the path here gives interaction back to Google that they sent you a qualified lead, you were charged for it, it actually booked to a job. You might not have won that job, or received that job, but at least you're telling Google that these are calls I want to receive, these are searches I want to receive, and you see the category says water damage service provider, water damage cleanup is what they searched for, some relative term around that, right? And that's really all you can ask for from the quality standpoint. You can't dictate what that consumer or business owner is calling about. They could be totally off base here, but what Google's trying to do is they're trying to match you to the best they can based on what that searcher is looking for. Okay, so that's a little bit about handling the leads. Some more information about that. Okay, so handling the leads, here's some tips. Use a tracking number, like I said before, that has a whisper on it so that your team or that you know it's actually coming from Google Local Service Ads. Why is that important? It's important because you want to get straight to qualifying that lead as soon as possible. And it's a critical component that we coach our clients on because at the end of the day, I love to have amazing customer service, but I don't want to pay for a lead if I don't have to. On Google Local Service Ads, okay? So my tips on that are get to the point as soon as possible, okay? What is your issue? Where are you located? Are you the homeowner or decision maker? Do you have insurance coverage if that applies to the call? Obviously mold, different situations there, right? Whatever your qualifying questions are within that first 60 seconds, if you feel like they're qualified, continue with the conversation. If they're a renter, they're located out of your area, or they have mold in their shower, and that's not something you're going to do, in that call as soon as possible. Otherwise, you're going to get charged for it. Okay. Not, so that's my best advice for you on how to qualify those leads. And a lot of times, sometimes you do all of those things and the AI still charges you for it. Again, frustrating, but this is your best advice that I can give you based on the hundreds of calls that we see and listen to on a monthly basis. Best shot of not getting charged for those leads. At the end of the day, you want to have to try to get that below 60, 90 seconds, and that's your best shot for unqualified calls and not getting charged for them. The other thing is, do not provide recommendations to someone or someone else on that call. Like if they're calling, they said they had water damage from a roof leak, and we've already got it mitigated, but I need a roofer. You want to make sure that you're not giving a roofer's name out to them, because they're going to charge you for that. Google, as soon as you give a phone number on their AI will pick that up. Jim has a question. Does LSA penalize you by using a tracking number? It does not. It does not penalize you by using a tracking number. There's no penalty for that. Basically, Google LSA actually uses their own tracking number as well. And so sometimes when you see your ads, they'll have a number in front of that. But what this does is allows you to either, number one, put a whisper on it. So it'll say, like, a whisper is basically, this is a call coming from Google local service ads, so your team knows. And it can also allow you to direct it to a specific team member that can handle these calls better. If any of us have ever used 33-mile radius, right? You don't answer that call, you're going to get dinged, right? And so those are, you want to make sure you answer these calls. That's a huge tip that we're going to share with you on the do's and don'ts and everything. But yes, so tracking number, that number, Jim, you had a question, where do you change this? You actually have to call Google to change that number. They're going to send you an email, and then you respond back and give them that number. And so you can change that number. Typically what will happen is the default number will be your Google Maps or Google Business Profile number by default. And so what will happen is, if you're trying to track where your leads are coming from, it's hard to differentiate those if you don't know where they're coming from. And so, yes, you can see the dashboard in Google Local Service Ads, but everything's kind of getting lumped into one bucket. So if you have separate tracking numbers, you have that whisper, it's directed to a specific member on the team that knows how to handle them perfectly. It just helps avoid a lot of things there. So, and finally, you got to rate these leads within Google. Give the feedback back to them, put the information in there, and then put the actual, whether it was booked or not. Jim, I hope that answers your question there. If you're not signed up for Google Local Services Ads, I don't make anything off this, guys. I'm just trying to give you some advice here based on my experience in the industry. This is where you can go to sign up for it, or just go out and Google Google Local Service Ads, and you can sign up for the program if you're not signed up for it. It's a pretty easy process. So this is kind of what the screen looks like right here, and you can step through all of those things. And ultimately, what you're going to see here, it gives you that top position at the top of the page. Some of the common questions that I hear is, I've signed up for this and I'm not getting anything out of it. Okay. What you have to do is go out there and search for common terms within your area. I've got a flooded basement, sewage cleanup company, all those sorts of things. And look at the companies at the top of the page. Do you have the reputation to compete with them? Do you, is your profile budget, is the profile actually even showing out there? So you'll see there, it says more water damage service companies. You click that. Is your listing in there? If it's not, call Google Local Services Support and troubleshoot with them and figure out why it's not listed. Maybe there's a verification thing that's wrong. Maybe you ran out of budget for the week, those sorts of things. So it is a very, very viable way to get leads coming in. We're going to talk about next the do's and don'ts. Any takeaways, anything that anybody has any questions on right now? What tracking number and whisper system would you recommend? There's a lot of them out there. We have our own internal system, but you basically are looking for a company that allows you to add a whisper on it, to record those calls and have multiple numbers. There's companies like CallRail. There's a company called What Converts. you don't have to necessarily have a tracking like a company like that. You can just have another number that you have, like if you have a Verizon One Talk or something like that, you can have another number for your company or another office extension on there, so that way you can differentiate them. The reason why I like to use tracking numbers is you can listen to them and get a transcription from them, and so that's hopefully that answers your question there, Matt. But those, if you just look out there for CallRail, what converts, there's a lot of different companies out there, Grasshopper, all these other things. There's a bunch of them. So, any other questions, any takeaways so far that we've covered that anybody has any questions on? If not, let's go ahead and dive into the top 5 do's for Google Local Service Ads. All right. So the first one here, be realistic with your budget. So when I say this, LSA is not PPC, and so you're going to pay by lead, and so it can look a lot more expensive if you ran pay-per-click before versus LSA, and so what you'll notice based on, I'm giving you some examples here on costs, real costs that we're seeing across the U.S. So for example, California, Florida, Texas, New York, those leads can range from $400 to $500 a piece. And if you have a budget of $1,000 that you're planning on spending for the month and you're in those areas, not going to work. It's not going to work. You're not going to have a fighting chance. Okay. The other thing is other examples. So Illinois, Missouri, Oklahoma, Louisiana, they're very all over the place. You can see that those are 120 to 200, sometimes 220. And so, it varies widely depending on the territory. Just like if you do pay-per-click, it's going to vary widely depending on the competition that's driving up the costs and all those different things. There is no true transparency into what that number is unless you have experience in that as industry or area actually running them and get the data in. But don't be surprised if you're in Florida and you're getting $420 cost per lead. Some of those aren't going to convert. Some of them are going to convert into $5, $20, $10,000, $5, $10, $20,000 jobs, right? So keep that in mind on your budget. If you have a budget of $1,000, you might get a couple coming through there, but then what's going to happen? Your ads are going to shut off, and Google's not going to trust that profile because you keep stopping and shutting off those ads. Now you can turn the schedule off, leave the ads on, turn the schedule off, or lower your budget and don't turn off the ads. So we'll talk about that in just a second. But the other thing here is know your location. Don't put only zip codes in there. Ideally, you want to cover cities and counties. You can do zip codes to cover those gaps if there's gaps in that map. And again, try not to cover a whole state. It's not going to work. Be focused on your target area. Got a question in there for initial research. What 5 to 10 keywords would be best to search for your competition? So let me get back to that question for you just in just a second here. As far as the next tip here on the do's, reviews are king. It is so true. Now, you go out there and you see a competitor that has 1,000 reviews, you're going to be like, those are fake or whatever. At the end of the day, it's not the total review count that matters. It's the review consistency that you're getting. So if you're getting an additional 4 to 10 to 5 reviews per month and you don't have big gaps in those reviews, then you're going to have a fighting chance to keep getting in the rotation in there. Now, some of these guys that are doing carpet cleaning and other services that are related, they're going to have a larger review count. And so sometimes you can't overcome that. But what you have to do is realize that Google's wanting to throw other people in there because they want to keep you in the platform, right, and engaged. So review consistency is number one here. And if you have a qualified lead that comes through Google Local Services ads, you can request that review through their actual platform instead of sending them just a text link to your Google Maps profile. So that's another tip there. So actively getting reviews helps you on Google Maps visibility and SEO. It absolutely helps you on Google Local Services. But don't be afraid if you have old profiles out there with a ton of reviews and you have 20, right? You've got to make a concerted effort to get your whole team involved in getting those reviews. And those are like pat on the backs. And if you have big gaps, if you go out there and look at your profile and you have big gaps of 30, 60, 3 months of reviews, it's a big problem, and you won't have a chance to even have a fighting chance once you set up this profile. So you've got to solve that. first. Otherwise, you won't be on the same level playing field. Okay. The other thing is add photos of your team, your truck, of jobs you've completed, and make sure they're good resolution. It's not too blurry. They will get they will get rejected. So add them regularly, at least once a week. Okay. And then finally, I know we all know this, but pick up your phone. You've got to make sure you answer every single one of these Google Local Services ads, or otherwise they're not going to recommend you for those phone calls. If you start having one or two missed phone calls, they're going to drop you out of the rotation, right? Because they don't get paid if you don't answer that phone. Okay. And if you answer that phone, some of those you're going to win, some of those you're not, but you've got to answer the phone, number one. Otherwise, might as well not even do this. Okay. So those are our top 5 to-dos there. And then the don'ts. So these are just as important as the do's, and probably more important. And so don't add random photos. So Google will flag photos that actually have that are off topic or unrelated. So sometimes you'll see that Google will flag photos that have just your truck, because it's kind of like an automotive ad or automotive photo. You can have team photos and those sorts of things. But look, there's a little section on your profile. Look for policy manager, and within there, if you have any policy violations on your profile, make sure you address those. Remove the photos or do an appeal for those photos to clean that up so your profile is as clean as it can be. Again, there's a little section within there called policy manager, so look for that. Again, keep the photos related to your business, and don't post a logo with your phone number on it. Just that, and that alone. Actually make the photos related to what you're doing and your team. Okay. Don't stop your ads. And I get it. Everybody has a budget. I have a budget as a business owner too. You can leave the ads active, but change the hours or reduce the budget. If you stop that, if you stop those ads, we've seen it time and time again where the profile was building strength, and then all of a sudden it just drops because you got busy and you turned them off, or you ran out of budget for the month and you turned them off. If you stop those profiles, I guarantee you there's 5 other companies that's going to keep them running. Okay. So the way you can combat that again is the hours that you have there. You can lower the budget way down to a budget that Google's not even going to, show you out there. Let's say bid $30, right, or something like that. You can adjust it that way. As soon as you stop those, it causes signals to Google's algorithm that says you're not interested in any more leads. I've got other people that are. So as we all know, Google's making a lot of money, right? And unfortunately, if you tell them that you don't want these, they're going to send them to somebody else, and it takes a long time for you to build back up that strength. So it's a huge red flag from Google's side of things. The other thing is, don't forget to renew your documents. It's so important. You want to make sure that verification screen is checked. Everything is checked off in there as green as much as possible. So if you notice that your certificate of insurance is about ready to expire, Google will flag that typically at 30 days before it expires. Work with your insurance company to get in front of that so that it does not expire within their system. Again, if that happens, you go through the verification process again, and you have to relearn and get back up into those rankings again. Okay. So make sure all your documentation and verification things are active. The other thing is make sure you're commenting and rating those profiles, adding comments, rating the lead as qualified or unqualified or satisfied or dissatisfied is extremely important for the AI. A lot of what Google does now is automated. And so their system will take that information into account. Again, I don't have X-ray vision into how their system works, but I'm just telling you based on the large number of profiles we have, this is what we've seen works. Okay. And finally, don't forget to check your Google Maps profile status. So GBP is Google Biz Profile. And if that is suspended or needing verification, LSA is not going to work. Google Local Service ads are not going to work if you have issues with that Google Maps profile. We definitely recommend having an address on that Google Maps profile. And it's very difficult if you have a home address, but the companies that are winning have business addresses on their profile that are verified, and then you'll see those show up in Google Local Service ads. Okay. I'm not saying it won't work without it, but the ones that have more visibility typically will have the address. So if you have an issue with your Google Maps profile and LSA is not performing, that's the why. Okay. So those are the top do's and don'ts. I know we're right at 44 after the hour here, and we've covered a lot of topics. Okay. We've talked about all of these sorts of things. Now is the action plan that I want to make sure you got in place. Okay. So we've covered a lot of things. Again, you know, a goal without a plan is just a wish, right? So make sure you have a plan. Everybody take out a piece of paper or take out something, take some notes here with. I'm going to recap all of those sorts of things we looked at. Okay. Make sure you look at your profiles if you have them and you're checking these boxes off. All right. So if you haven't signed up, obviously go ahead and sign up. It doesn't cost anything to sign up. You need to gather those documents, firm certification if it's required by your state, certificate of insurance, complete the background check, get all that in order. Don't do all your text, just do the business owner. Make sure the exact name and address matches up. If you have a profile already and you go to that verification tab and everything is not checked, you got to work on those or you're going to have an issue. Make sure you have a budget that's set high enough and understanding that it's going to depend on the data coming in to understand what that budget is in your area. Okay. Your service area. If you go out there and you're not getting leads off of Google local service ads and your service area is the entire state or a huge region, that down, shrink that area down. Okay. And test it from there. Also, make sure everything is filled out on your profile, your website, your bios, your address, tracking number, all of those things. Your business hours, your job types, enable messaging leads. If you haven't tried messaging leads, just make sure you respond quickly to those. And the rating system works very similar to those. Those are just typically a lot less expensive on the messaging leads. And finally, the next few things here are making sure you're providing ratings and feedback, mark them as booked. Do not stop and start your ads. Try to adjust the ads hours or the budgeting and make sure you're getting reviews. And if you're missing phone calls, you got to solve that number one thing. Otherwise, you're not going to get recommended by Google. So hopefully you've taken a couple things from this. If you need to take a screenshot of this, check your profiles. If you haven't set up the profile, this is everything you need to do. And I'd highly recommend you pick 3 of them. Right? Pick 3 of them and then put down there who you're going to task to do this on your team, or whether it's you or you're going to help with someone else. So I always love this quote here: never put off tomorrow what you can do today. I think we all just spent 45 minutes or 47 minutes consuming this information, right? Hopefully you got 1 or 2 things out of this that you can check for yourself, but take action. Imperfect action is the way we move our businesses forward. Love this quote from Thomas Jefferson here. You know, if you are somebody that needs help or has questions, we do have a comprehensive system within our company here that we use for our clients. And ultimately, you need a plan. And so our strategy is increasing your visibility, improving your brand reputation, and your overall reputation for your company online. Okay. And so if you have any questions or you want to figure out what's wrong with your Google Maps, Google Local Services profile, feel free to call us, schedule a meeting with us. We're happy to dive into it. You can talk with me directly. I'll give you advice. Maybe it's not the right time to work with us, but at least, again, my goal is to help 100 restoration contractors this year. And if I can help you in any way, feel free to reach out to us. As I said before, we're going to give you all these resources, the book, our checklists, recordings. You'll have a replay of this. You can go to restorationmarketing.com/2025 and all these recordings will be there. And we're going to send you an email after this as well for your reference. So I'm going to stay here and answer any other questions. If you have any questions, feel free to add them to the chat. But that's the bulk of what we're going to cover today. Hopefully you got some good information out of this. If you did, I would love put a 2 in the chat there if you got something out of it. Give me some feedback there. Just about lost my voice, but yeah, thank you guys. I really appreciate that. Monique, I'm going to answer your question here. So you had a question about, for initial research, what 5 to 10 keywords would be best to search for your competition? Not sure exactly what you mean by search for your competition. So you're wanting to compare your results versus your competition. I typically, when we do research, yes, we'll want to look at some of the common terms that are related to the industry. Obviously water damage restoration, water restoration company, flood cleanup company, all those sorts of terms that you can search and see who's showing up on average in the map section in the Google Local Services ads and compare your company there. That's only going to get you so far. What you can do by that comparison is to look and see, are you on a level playing field with them? Do you have enough reputation to compete with them? Do you have content on your website? Do you have your BAPS profile set up? Do you have all of those sorts of things set up to give you a fighting chance? That's the research that we typically will do. And if you don't, you've got to create a list, a checklist of those things, okay? Of what you need to address. And so, Monique, I'm not sure if that answered your question specifically, but we do have a list of keywords that you can download. And if you go to this link here, restorationmarketing.com/2025, we have webinars that talk about SEO, keywords. There's a whole list of keywords there for water, mold, and fire that you can download on there. And you can do that research on your profile versus your competition. Yeah, John, no problem. Hopefully that answered your question there, Monique. Any other questions about Google Local Services ads or about your profile, if you're stuck on something, or any questions from anybody? Go ahead and put them in there in the chat if you would. Any other questions? Okay, if not, thank you very much for joining today's webinar. Again, if you need anything at all, feel free to reach out to us at restorationmarketing.com. You can download those resources at restorationmarketing.com/2025. And each month we do additional webinars like this, where we help you, level up your knowledge and give you as much resources as possible. Next month's webinar is going to be about Google ads and pay-per-click. We do have a recording from last year, so you can certainly go to our website and watch that from last year, but it's going to be updated with all the latest information in 2025 here. So again, thank you very much for your time, everybody. If there's no other questions, then I'm going to go and in the chat or in the webinar, and thank you for joining today.